My name is Margaret Wilson, and I'm going to tell you about the week that changed everything. I'm 68 years old, and for the past 25 years, I've worked as a janitor at Harvard University. Not because I had to, but because I chose to. You'll understand why soon enough. If you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe to the channel and tell me which city you are watching us from. Now let's continue the story. It was a Tuesday evening in late May when my phone rang. Tyler's name appeared on the screen, and my heart jumped the way it always did when my son called. He was finishing his final week at Harvard Medical School, preparing for graduation, the moment I had dreamed about for decades. "Hi, honey," I answered, already smiling. "How are you feeling about Saturday? I have your father's watch all polished and ready to give you after the ceremony." There was a pause, a long, uncomfortable pause that made my stomach clench. "Mom, we need to talk." His voice was cold, clinical, the voice he used with difficult patients during his rotations, not the voice of my Tyler, the boy I had raised alone after his father died when he was 12. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" "Mom, you can't come to graduation." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually stumbled, reaching for the kitchen counter to steady myself. "What do you mean I can't come?" "Tyler, I've been planning this for months. I took time off work. I bought a new dress. My classmates will see you. Just a janitor. It would be embarrassing for all of us." I felt something die inside my chest. 25 years of walking those same Harvard halls, cleaning the classrooms where my son studied, emptying the trash cans in the library where he spent countless nights. 25 years of being proud to work at the same institution that was shaping my boy into a doctor. "Tyler, I don't understand. I'm your mother." "Look, Mom, you don't get it. These people, my classmates, their families, they're different. They're doctors, lawyers, business owners. Dr. Patterson's parents own half of Back Bay. Sarah Chen's father is a federal judge. How am I supposed to introduce you? Meet my mom. She empties your trash cans." Each word was a knife. I had cleaned those very trash cans in Dr. Patterson's classroom building. I had mopped the floors of the medical library where Sarah Chen studied. And my son was ashamed of me. "I've worked so hard to fit in here, Mom. Please don't ruin this for me." "Ruin this for you?" My voice was barely a whisper. "Tyler, everything I've done for the past 25 years has been for you. I chose to work at Harvard so I could be close to you, so I could watch you grow, so I could be part of your world, even from a distance. Well, I never asked you to do that." The line went silent. I stood in my small Cambridge apartment surrounded by pictures of Tyler's achievements, his high school graduation, his acceptance letter to Harvard, his Dean's List certificates. All of it suddenly felt meaningless. "Hey, so what am I supposed to do on Saturday?" I finally asked. "Watch it online. They live-stream the ceremony. You'll have a better view anyway." He said goodbye quickly after that, leaving me holding a dead phone and a broken heart. I sat on my couch, the same couch where Tyler and I used to watch movies together, where I helped him with homework, where we planned his future. And I cried like I hadn't cried since his father's funeral. But then I remembered something I had kept hidden for 20 years. I walked to my bedroom closet and pulled out a small metal box from behind my winter coats. Inside was an envelope, sealed and yellowed with age, on the front, in shaky handwriting, "For Margaret Wilson. Open when you need to remember who you are." It was time. I held that envelope in my trembling hands, remembering the day I received it. It was December 15th, 2004. I was still working as a registered nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital then, before I made the decision to become a janitor at Harvard to stay close to Tyler. Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore had been my patient for 3 months. 92 years old, sharp as a tack, and stubborn as a mule. She had no family, outlived them all, and had taken a particular liking to me during her extended stay for pneumonia complications. "Margaret," she had whispered on her last day, pressing the envelope into my hands. "You're the only person who treated me like a human being instead of a burden. This is for when life gets hard, dear. And it will get hard." I had tucked it away and honestly forgotten about it as the years passed. Tyler became my whole world, and I was content to live modestly, saving every penny for his education and future. Now, sitting on my bed with tears still wet on my cheeks, I carefully opened the seal. Inside were legal documents that made my hands shake so violently I almost dropped them. stock certificates for Massachusetts General Hospital, 40% ownership. Mrs. Whitmore had been Eleanor Whitmore Cabot from the old Boston Cabot family. She had inherited a fortune and had been quietly investing in hospitals and medical facilities for decades. But that wasn't all. There was a deed to a brownstone mansion in Beacon Hill, worth at least $4 million in today's market. Bank statements showing an account at Boston Private Bank with $3.2 million. Money that had been growing with compound interest for 20 years. Real estate holdings in Back Bay that I didn't even know existed. At the bottom of the pile was a handwritten letter on elegant stationery. Asterisk. My dearest Margaret, by the time you read this, I'll be long gone, and you'll probably need reminding of your worth. You are not just a nurse, just a janitor, or just anything. You are a woman of remarkable character who chose love over status, service over recognition. I've watched you sacrifice your career advancement to work night shifts so you could be home with your son during the day. I've seen you choose the smaller apartment so Tyler could have the better school district. I've witnessed you decline dates with good men because you didn't want to take any attention away from raising that boy. You, my dear, are royalty, and now you have the kingdom to prove it. The hospital stocks will give you influence. The properties will give you independence. The money will give you choices. But most importantly, my dear Margaret, this inheritance will give you the power to teach the people in your life what true value means. Use it wisely. With love and respect, Eleanor Whitmore Cabot. Asterisk. I read the letter 3 times before the reality sank in. I wasn't just comfortable. I was wealthy. Very wealthy. And more than that, I owned 40% of the hospital where Tyler would be doing his residency. My phone buzzed. A text from Tyler. Mom, I know you're upset, but this is really important to me. Please understand. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I called Mr. Robert Johnson, the attorney whose card was paperclipped to the documents. His number was still active, and his secretary put me through immediately when I mentioned Mrs. Whitmore's name. Mrs. Wilson, we've been waiting for your call for 20 years. I was Mrs. Whitmore's personal attorney, and now I'm yours. When can we meet? The next morning I sat in Mr. Johnson's mahogany-paneled office in downtown Boston, learning about my new reality. He was a distinguished man in his 70s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Eleanor spoke about you constantly, he said, spreading the documents across his desk. She said you were the daughter she never had. She's been gone 15 years now, but she left specific instructions about your inheritance. Why didn't anyone contact me before? She wanted you to discover it when you truly needed it. She said you'd know when that time came. He smiled. It seems she was right. Mr. Johnson explained everything. The hospital stocks had split twice and grown enormously in value. The real estate had appreciated beyond anyone's expectations. The money had been expertly managed by his firm's financial advisors. What does this mean exactly? I asked, still trying to process it all. It means, Mrs. Wilson, that you're one of the wealthiest women in Boston. And more importantly for your current situation, it means you have significant influence at Massachusetts General Hospital. The board meets monthly, and as the largest individual shareholder, your voice carries enormous weight. The residency programs are decided by committee, yes. A committee that reports to the board of directors. A board where you now have the largest single vote. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger. I was beyond anger. This was something colder, more calculated. Tyler wanted to be embarrassed by his janitor mother? Fine. Let's see how he felt about his principal shareholder mother. Mr. Johnson, I need to ask you some questions about how hospital hierarchies work. For the next 2 hours, we discussed power structures, board influence, and the delicate politics of medical residency placements. By the time I left his office, I had a clear understanding of exactly how much control I now wielded over Tyler's immediate future. But I also had a plan, not for revenge. Eleanor's letter had been clear about using this gift wisely. This was going to be about education, about teaching my son what really mattered in life. I walked out of that office building and looked up at the Boston skyline. Somewhere out there, Tyler was probably studying for his final exams, confident that his embarrassing mother would stay quietly in the background of his big day. He had no idea what was coming. That evening, I sat in my small Cambridge apartment with a cup of tea and a legal pad, planning what Eleanor Whitmore Cabot would have called a proper education in humility. But first, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. I called Tyler's roommate's mother, Patricia Stevens, whom I'd met at a few Harvard events over the years. Patricia was always kind to me, treating me with respect, despite knowing I worked as a janitor. "Margaret, how lovely to hear from you. Are you excited about graduation?" "Actually, Patricia, I wanted to ask you about the post-graduation reception. Tyler mentioned it was quite formal." "Oh yes, it's at the Four Seasons. Very elegant. All the families will be there. It's really the main networking event. The hospital directors attend, the department heads, even some board members from the major teaching hospitals. It's where the real connections are made for residency placements." B. Perfect. The Four Seasons reception would be where Tyler expected to shine without his embarrassing mother around. It would also be exactly where I needed to make my presence known. Who typically attends from the hospitals? Well, Dr. Richardson from Mass General always comes. He's the director of internal medicine, and I believe some board members attend too. Tyler must be thrilled about his residency placement there. My blood ran cold. His what? Oh, maybe I wasn't supposed to say anything. But Michael mentioned that Tyler already heard back from Mass General. He got the internal medicine residency. Isn't that wonderful? Tyler had gotten into Mass General, my hospital, and hadn't even told me. He was planning to work under my authority without even knowing it. The irony was almost poetic. After I hung up, I made my second call. To Mr. Johnson. "I need to know about this year's residency placements at Mass General, specifically internal medicine. Let me pull those files. Yes, here we are. Very competitive this year. 24 applications for 6 spots. The selection committee made their recommendations last week, pending final board approval in... When does the board vote? Next Tuesday, actually. 3 days before graduation. Why do you ask? I think it's time I started attending board meetings." The next morning, I began my transformation. But not the kind Tyler would expect. My first stop was Newbury Street. Not for designer clothes, but for a consultation with Eleanor Hartwell, Boston's most exclusive personal stylist. Mrs. Hartwell had dressed Boston's elite for 30 years. "I need to look like old money," I told her. "Not flashy, not nouveau riche. I need to look like someone who's always belonged in boardrooms." She studied me carefully. "May I ask the occasion?" "I'm reclaiming my position in society." Mrs. Hartwell smiled. "I understand completely. Let's begin." We spent 4 hours selecting a wardrobe that whispered wealth rather than shouted it. Subtle, elegant pieces from Talbots and Brooks Brothers, a string of pearls that looked inherited, a handbag that cost more than Tyler's monthly student loan payment, but looked understated and classic. My next stop was Charles Street, to a salon Patricia Stevens had mentioned. They styled my gray hair into an elegant chignon and taught me techniques for subtle, sophisticated makeup. The woman looking back at me in the mirror was still Margaret Wilson, but she was also Eleanor Whitmore Cabot's protégée. That afternoon, I met with Dr. James Mitchell, a retired etiquette instructor who had taught diplomats, wives, and politicians 8 daughters. At 75, he was sharp, witty, and absolutely discreet. "I need to learn how to command a room," I told him. "How to speak with authority in boardroom settings. May I ask your background?" 25 years as a registered nurse, then 25 years as a janitor by choice. Now I'm a hospital board member by inheritance. Dr. Mitchell raised an eyebrow. "Fascinating. Most of my clients are trying to gain power they've never earned. You already have the substance. You just need the presentation." We worked on posture, voice projection, and the subtle art of making statements instead of asking questions. He taught me how to pause for effect, how to use silence as a tool, and how to project confidence even when feeling uncertain. "Remember," he said during our final session, "true authority comes from competence and character. You have both. The rest is just theater." Meanwhile, I began researching everyone involved in Tyler's world. I spent hours in the Boston Public Library, reading society pages and medical journals. I learned about the families of Tyler's classmates, the politics of hospital residency programs, and the financial pressures facing medical education. Dr. Patricia Hammond, the mother Tyler was so impressed by, Her family pharmaceutical company had been fined by the FDA twice for safety violations. Judge Chen, Sarah's father, he was currently under investigation for conflicts of interest in several cases. These were the people Tyler thought were superior to his mother. On Friday, I attended my first Mass General Board meeting. The conference room was intimidating. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor, a massive mahogany table, leather chairs that probably cost more than most people's cars. Ladies and gentlemen, announced Board Chairman Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, I'd like to introduce our largest individual shareholder, Mrs. Margaret Wilson. The room fell silent. These were powerful people, doctors, lawyers, business leaders, but they all knew that in this room, my vote mattered more than anyone else's. Mrs. Wilson, would you like to say something about your vision for the hospital? I stood slowly, channeling everything Dr. Mitchell had taught me. Thank you, Dr. Morrison. I believe this hospital should reflect the values of service, excellence, and integrity above all else. I look forward to ensuring that every decision we make honors those principles. Simple, direct. No one could argue with it, but everyone understood the implication. I would be watching. After the meeting, Dr. Richardson, the internal medicine director, approached me. Mrs. Wilson, I understand you have connections to Harvard Medical School. My son is graduating on Saturday. Wonderful. Will he be joining one of our residency programs? That remains to be determined. Dr. Richardson looked puzzled, but I simply smiled and walked away. Let them wonder. That evening, I made my final preparations. I practiced my introduction in the mirror. Mrs. Margaret Wilson, principal shareholder of Massachusetts General Hospital. I rehearsed answers to questions Tyler might ask. I prepared for every possible scenario. But most importantly, I wrote a letter, not to Tyler, but to myself. A reminder of why I was doing this. This isn't about revenge. This is about teaching. Tyler needs to learn that worth isn't measured by job titles or social status. He needs to understand that the woman he's ashamed of is the same woman who gave up everything to ensure his success. And he needs to learn this lesson before he becomes the kind of doctor and the kind of man who treats people based on their perceived value rather than their inherent dignity. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly, typical Boston spring weather. Tyler would be getting ready in his dorm room, probably nervous about the ceremony, excited about his future, and relieved that his embarrassing mother wouldn't be there to ruin his big day. I stood in my bedroom, looking at my reflection one final time. Gone was Margaret Wilson, the janitor. In her place stood Mrs. Margaret Wilson, hospital board member, property owner, and very wealthy woman. But more than that, I was still Tyler's mother. And sometimes being a good mother means teaching your child lessons they don't want to learn. I picked up my car keys, not to my 15-year-old Honda Civic, but to the Mercedes sedan I'd purchased yesterday with cash. Tyler wanted to be embarrassed by his mother? Today, he'd learn the difference between embarrassment and shame. I arrived at Harvard Medical School 30 minutes before the ceremony began, driving my new Mercedes through the gates where I had walked as an employee for 25 years. The irony wasn't lost on me. I knew every security guard, every groundskeeper, every maintenance worker on campus. They all waved at me as I passed, probably wondering why Margaret from custodial was driving such an expensive car. I parked in the VIP section, a privilege that came with my new status as a major hospital board member, and walked toward the ceremony venue. My transformation was complete. Navy blue Chanel suit, pearl necklace that had belonged to Eleanor Whitmore Cabot herself, and the kind of quiet confidence that only comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you're worth. The graduation was being held in Harvard's Sanders Theater, the same building where I had spent countless hours cleaning lecture halls and emptying trash cans. Today, I walked through the front entrance like I owned the place. I spotted Tyler immediately among the graduating students. He looked handsome in his cap and gown, nervously adjusting his hood as he chatted with his classmates. Sarah Chen was there with her federal judge father, looking appropriately distinguished. Dr. Patterson's son stood with his parents, the ones who owned half of Back Bay, according to Tyler. I took my seat in the reserved section, right where family members were supposed to sit. Tyler, scanning the audience from the stage area, did a double take when he saw me. His face went through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, and then something close to panic. He couldn't exactly leave the ceremony to confront me, so he had to sit there, wondering how his janitor mother had gotten into the VIP seating area and why she looked so different. The ceremony proceeded beautifully. Dean Harrison gave an inspiring speech about service and dedication. Various awards were presented, and then came the moment I had been waiting for. Ladies and gentlemen, Dean Harrison announced, we're honored to have several distinguished guests with us today, including members of the boards of directors from our major teaching hospital partners. He began introducing the hospital representatives. When he got to Mass General, my heart started pounding. From Massachusetts General Hospital, we're pleased to welcome Board Chairman Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, Internal Medicine Director Dr. Richardson, and our principal shareholder, Mrs. Margaret Wilson. I stood gracefully and nodded to the audience. The polite applause that followed was nothing compared to the look of absolute shock on Tyler's face. His mouth actually fell open. Several of his classmates turned to stare at him, clearly wondering about the connection between him and the principal shareholder they'd just heard about. After the ceremony, as families mingled and congratulated their graduates, I positioned myself strategically near the reception area. I wanted Tyler to find me when he was ready, but I also wanted to meet some of these families he was so eager to impress. Dr. Patterson approached me first. Mrs. Wilson, I don't believe we've met. I'm Dr. Patterson, Brad's father. How lovely to meet you. Your son and mine have been classmates. Really? Which one is yours? Tyler Wilson, the young man who will be applying for residency positions. I smiled sweetly. I understand he's particularly interested in internal medicine at Mass General. Dr. Patterson's expression shifted slightly. He was clearly doing the math. If I was Tyler's mother and the principal shareholder of Mass General, his son's future colleague had some very powerful connections. Tyler Wilson. Yes, of course. Brilliant young man. Brad speaks very highly of him. That's wonderful to hear. I'm sure they'll both excel in their residencies wherever they end up. Judge Chen was next, approaching with his daughter Sarah. Mrs. Wilson, congratulations on your son's graduation. Sarah tells me Tyler is exceptionally talented. Thank you, Judge Chen. Tyler has always been dedicated to his studies. Of course, talent alone doesn't guarantee success in medical training. Character matters so much more, don't you think? There was something in my tone that made both the judge and his daughter look slightly uncomfortable, though they couldn't quite put their finger on why. One by one, the families Tyler had been so desperate to impress came to pay their respects to the mysterious Mrs. Wilson, who apparently wielded significant influence in Boston's medical community. Each conversation was polite, respectful, and completely different from how these same people would have treated Margaret the janitor. Finally, Tyler worked up the courage to approach me. His friends hung back, watching curiously as he walked over to where I stood, chatting with Dean Harrison about hospital partnerships. Mom, he said quietly, his voice strained. Can we talk? Of course, darling. Dean Harrison, I'd like you to meet my son, Tyler. Tyler, this is Dean Harrison. The dean shook Tyler's hand warmly. Your mother and I were just discussing the wonderful partnership between Harvard Medical School and Mass General. You should be very proud. She's been telling me about your acceptance into their internal medicine program. Tyler's face went white. My acceptance? Well, pending final board approval, of course. I added smoothly. The board meets Tuesday to ratify this year's residency selections. Dean Harrison nodded. I'm sure there won't be any issues. Mrs. Wilson speaks very highly of your character and dedication. After the dean walked away, Tyler stared at me like he was seeing a ghost. Mom, what the hell is going on? How do you know the dean? What did he mean about board approval? And why is everyone treating you like... Like what? Tyler, like you're important. The words hung in the air between us. This right here was the heart of everything. His mother could only be important if she fit his narrow definition of success. We need to talk privately, I said, but not here. Let's go to dinner. I can't. There's a reception at the Four Seasons tonight. All the families will be there and... I know about the reception, sweetheart. I'm invited. His eyes widened. You're invited? How? The same way I was invited to sit in the VIP section today. The same way I know Dean Harrison. The same way I know about your residency application. I paused, letting it sink in. I think you're beginning to understand that there are things about your mother you don't know. We agreed to meet at my apartment after his reception. I could see Tyler was torn between curiosity and social anxiety. He wanted answers, but he also wanted to enjoy his big night without having to explain his suddenly mysterious mother to his classmates. I went home to wait, but not before stopping by the Four Seasons to make one final impression. The hotel's ballroom was elegantly decorated, filled with Harvard's finest families celebrating their children's achievements. I made a brief appearance, just long enough to be seen and to have a few strategic conversations. Dr. Morrison from the hospital board was there, and she made sure to introduce me to several key people. This is Margaret Wilson, our principal shareholder at Mass General. Her son just graduated today. The ripple effect was immediate. People who might have ignored Tyler's mother, the janitor, were suddenly very interested in getting to know Tyler's mother, the hospital shareholder. I watched from across the room as Tyler found himself surrounded by classmates and families who were suddenly much more eager to include him in their conversations. But I also watched his discomfort grow. Every time someone mentioned his mother's position or asked about his family's medical connections, he looked more confused and overwhelmed. After an hour, I quietly left the reception and went home to wait. Tyler arrived at my apartment at 10:30 p.m., still in his suit, but looking completely drained. He sat heavily on my couch, the same couch where we'd spent so many evenings together when he was young. "Okay, Mom, I need you to explain what's happening. Everyone at the reception was talking about you like you're some kind of, I don't know, some kind of big shot. Dr. Richardson kept asking me about our family's long history with Mass General. Sarah Chen's father wanted to discuss business opportunities with our family. What the hell is going on?" I sat down across from him, still wearing my elegant suit, still every inch the Mrs. Wilson who had commanded respect all day. "Tyler, do you remember Mrs. Whitmore, the elderly patient I used to tell you about when I worked at Mass General as a nurse?" "Vaguely. You said she was lonely." "She was. And she was also Eleanor Whitmore Cabot, one of the wealthiest women in Boston. When she died, she left me an inheritance." I pulled out the documents Mr. Johnson had copied for me and spread them on the coffee table. Tyler's eyes grew wider with each page. 40% of Mass General Hospital, a mansion in Beacon Hill, $3.2 million in investment accounts, and several valuable properties in Back Bay. Tyler stared at the papers like they might disappear if he blinked. This is impossible. We're not wealthy. You work as a janitor. You live in this tiny apartment. You drive that old Honda." "I worked as a janitor by choice, Tyler. I kept the inheritance secret because I wanted you to grow up understanding the value of hard work and humility. I wanted you to earn your success, not inherit it." "But why didn't you tell me? Do you know how hard things have been? Student loans, working part-time jobs, worrying about money constantly." "Yes, I do know, because I chose for you to have those experiences. They build character." Tyler stood up abruptly, pacing around my small living room. "This is insane. You let me struggle when you could have made everything easy. You let me take out loans when you have millions. What kind of mother does that?" "The kind of mother who loves her son enough to let him become a man instead of a spoiled child." He stopped pacing and turned to face me. "Is that what this is about? Some kind of lesson? You humiliated me today, Mom. Do you know what it was like having everyone ask me about you when I had no idea what they were talking about? Was it humiliating, Tyler? Or was it just confusing?" He paused, processing the difference. "Let me ask you something," I continued. "How did people treat you today after they learned about my position at the hospital? They were more interested in talking to me, more respectful. And how did they treat you before when they thought I was just a janitor?" Tyler's face flushed. He was starting to understand. "They treated you exactly the same, Tyler. You're the same person you were this morning. Your grades are the same. Your knowledge is the same. Your potential as a doctor is the same. The only thing that changed was their perception of your mother's worth." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Cambridge street where I had lived modestly for so many years. "Do you want to know why I really worked as a janitor at Harvard? It wasn't because I had to. It was because I wanted to be close to you. I wanted to see you in your element, to be part of your world even if you didn't know it. I cleaned the buildings where you studied. I emptied the trash in the library where you spent your nights. I was proud to work at the same institution that was shaping you into a doctor." Tyler sat back down heavily. "Mom, and when you called me Tuesday night, and told me I couldn't come to your graduation because I was just a janitor. You broke something in me that I'm not sure can be fixed." The room fell silent, except for the ticking of the old clock on my mantel, the same clock that had marked the hours of Tyler's childhood, the same clock that had counted down the days until his graduation. "But here's what you need to understand, Tyler. I didn't reveal my wealth today to embarrass you. I did it to teach you something crucial before you become a doctor, before you start treating patients who might be janitors or waitresses or bus drivers." I turned back to face him. "Those people are not worth less than the children of judges and business owners. Their pain doesn't hurt less because they don't have trust funds. Their lives don't matter less because they don't wear designer clothes." Tyler looked up at me, and for the first time all day, I saw my little boy, instead of the ambitious young man who had been ashamed of his mother. "I know that, Mom." "I do." "Do you? Because this week you judged my worth based on my job title. You decided I wasn't good enough to share your big moment because of what other people might think. That's not the son I raised, Tyler. And it's not the doctor I hoped you would become." He put his head in his hands. "I'm so sorry. I was just the pressure to fit in, to prove myself. These people, they've had every advantage, and I felt like I had to work twice as hard to be accepted." "You did work twice as hard, and you earned your place at that graduation ceremony. But you didn't earn it because I was secretly wealthy. You earned it because you're brilliant and dedicated and hard-working. Those qualities come from you, not from me or my bank account." I sat down next to him on the couch. "Tyler, I love you more than anything in this world, but I will not allow you to be the kind of person who treats others as less than based on their circumstances." "What happens now?" he asked quietly. "With the residency program? With Mass General?" This was the moment I had been building toward all week. "That depends entirely on you." The next Tuesday, Tyler arrived at my apartment exactly at 9 a.m. I had told him to meet me there before we drove to Mass General together for the board meeting that would decide his residency fate. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Mom, I've been thinking all weekend about what you said. About the kind of doctor I want to be, the kind of person I want to be. And what have you decided?" He took a deep breath. "I want to apologize. Not just for what I said about graduation, but for not seeing you. Really seeing you. I got so caught up in what other people might think that I forgot who you actually are." I studied his face carefully. "Tell me who I am, Tyler. You're the woman who worked double shifts so I could have tutoring when I struggled with calculus. You're the person who drove me to every debate tournament, even when it meant missing sleep before your own work. You're the mother who saved every penny so I could go to college without drowning in debt." His voice broke slightly. "And you're the woman who chose to work at Harvard, not because it was the best job available, but because it meant you could be near me. Go on. You're also the woman who raised me to believe that everyone deserves dignity and respect, regardless of their job or their bank account. And somewhere along the way, I forgot that lesson. I became exactly the kind of person you taught me not to be." I nodded slowly. This was progress, but I needed to know if he truly understood. "Tyler, in 30 minutes, I'm going to walk into that boardroom and cast a vote on your residency application. What do you think I should do?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. "Honestly, I think you should vote against me." That surprised me. "Why?" "Because I need to earn it on my own merit. If you vote for me because I'm your son, then I'm no better than the kids who get advantages because of their family connections. And if you vote for me, after what I said to you, then I'm learning the wrong lesson entirely, which is that I can treat people badly and still get what I want because of who I'm connected to." I felt a surge of pride. Maybe I had gotten through to him after all. "But there's something else," he continued. "If you vote against me, I need you to know that I'll understand. And I'll respect your decision, because being your son shouldn't give me advantages that other candidates don't have. And what will you do if you don't get the Mass General residency?" "I'll apply to other programs. I'll work harder. I'll prove that I deserve a position based on my abilities as a doctor, not my relationships." He looked up at me. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure I never again treat anyone the way I treated you last week." We drove to Mass General in silence. As we pulled into the parking garage, where I now had a reserved space marked Board Member M. Wilson, Tyler spoke again. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course. When you worked here as a nurse, before I was born, were you happy?" I thought about that question as we rode the elevator to the executive floor. I was. I loved patient care. I loved making a difference in people's lives during their most vulnerable moments. Why did you leave nursing? Because when your father died, I needed more flexibility to raise you alone. Nursing requires long, unpredictable hours. Janitorial work let me be home when you got out of school. You gave up your career for me. I chose you over my career. There's a difference. The boardroom was exactly as intimidating as it had been the previous Friday. But this time, Tyler was with me. The other board members greeted me warmly and looked curiously at the young man in the expensive suit standing beside me. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, I'd like you to meet my son, Tyler Wilson. He's one of the residency candidates we'll be discussing today. The room went completely silent. Dr. Richardson, who had been so friendly to me the week before, looked uncomfortable. Dr. Morrison raised an eyebrow. Several other board members exchanged glances. Mrs. Wilson, Dr. Morrison said carefully, I'm not sure it's appropriate for a candidate to be present during deliberations about his application. You're absolutely right, I replied. Tyler, please wait outside. After Tyler left, the tension in the room was palpable. Dr. Richardson cleared his throat. Margaret, I have to say, this puts us in a very difficult position. Your son's application is strong, but having the principal shareholder's child in the program raises concerns about conflicts of interest. I agree completely, I said, and several people looked surprised, which is why I'm recusing myself from any vote on his application. But Margaret, Dr. Morrison said, your vote carries the most weight here. If you abstain, we're essentially making this decision without input from our largest stakeholder. No, I replied firmly. You're making this decision based purely on medical merit, which is exactly how it should be made. Every candidate deserves to be evaluated on their qualifications alone. Dr. Richardson nodded slowly. That's very principled of you. It's the right thing to do. And if this board can't make good decisions without being influenced by personal relationships or financial considerations, then we have bigger problems than one residency placement. The discussion that followed was thorough and fair. They reviewed Tyler's grades, his clinical rotations evaluations, his research experience, and his letters of recommendation. They compared his qualifications to the other candidates objectively. In the end, Tyler was accepted, not because of who his mother was, but because his credentials genuinely merited the position. When they called him back into the room to deliver the news, I watched his face carefully. He was happy, but not surprised. And when Dr. Richardson congratulated him, Tyler responded with exactly the right words. Thank you. I promise you won't regret this decision. I understand the responsibility that comes with training at this hospital, and I'll do everything I can to honor the trust you've placed in me. After the meeting, as we walked back to the parking garage, Tyler turned to me. Thank you. For what? For not using your influence to guarantee my acceptance. For making me earn it on my own. Tyler, I need you to understand something. I would have fought against your acceptance if I thought you didn't deserve it. Being my son doesn't give you special privileges. It gives you higher standards to meet. He nodded. I understand. And Mom? Yes? I'll never be ashamed of you again. Not your job, not our apartment, not anything about who you are or who we are as a family. Good, because I'm done hiding who I am too. 6 months later, I stood in the living room of my Beacon Hill mansion, looking out at Boston Harbor through windows that Eleanor Whitmore Cabot had gazed through for decades. The house was finally starting to feel like home, filled with a mixture of my modest furniture from Cambridge and Eleanor's elegant antiques. Tyler was thriving in his residency at Mass General. More importantly, he was becoming the kind of doctor I had always hoped he would be. Last week, he called to tell me about an elderly homeless man he had treated in the emergency room. Mom, his name is Frank, and he was embarrassed about his appearance, apologizing for bothering us. I spent extra time with him, made sure he got a hot meal and clean clothes before discharge. I kept thinking about what you taught me, that every person deserves dignity regardless of their circumstances. How did that feel? I asked. Right. It felt right. I had made changes in my own life too. I resigned from my janitorial position at Harvard, but not before organizing a scholarship fund for the children of university staff members. The Margaret Wilson Educational Fund would ensure that sons and daughters of janitors, groundskeepers, and cafeteria workers could attend college without the financial stress Tyler and I had experienced. At Mass General, I took my board responsibilities seriously. focusing particularly on patient advocacy and staff treatment. I pushed for better wages for hospital support staff and implemented programs to ensure that all patients, regardless of their insurance status or social position, received respectful care. But perhaps the most meaningful change was personal. I started dating again for the first time since Tyler's father died. Dr. Harold Mitchell, a retired cardiologist I met at a hospital fundraising event, was kind, intelligent, and refreshingly unimpressed by my wealth. He was more interested in my years as a nurse than my current bank balance. "You gave up a lot to raise Tyler alone," he said during one of our early dinners. "That takes real strength." "I didn't give up anything," I replied. "I made choices, and I'd make them again." Tyler approved of Harold, especially after learning that he volunteered at free clinics in Roxbury and Dorchester, providing cardiac care to underserved communities. "He reminds me of you, Mom," Tyler said. "Someone who measures success by how much he helps others, not by how much he accumulates for himself." This past weekend, Tyler brought his girlfriend Sarah to Sunday dinner at my new house. Not Sarah Chen from medical school, but Sarah Martinez, a social worker he had met while treating patients in the emergency room. She was smart, compassionate, and completely unaware of my financial status until she arrived at the mansion. "Tyler never mentioned that your family was wealthy," she whispered to me while he was getting wine from the cellar. "We weren't, until recently. But more importantly, we're not our money. We're our values and our choices." She smiled. That's exactly what Tyler always says. He talks about how his mother taught him that a person's worth isn't determined by their job title or bank account, and spängde. It warmed my heart to know that Tyler was sharing those lessons with someone he cared about. The most beautiful moment came last month, during the hospital's annual charity gala. I was seated at the head table as principal shareholder, wearing an elegant gown and the emerald necklace that had belonged to Eleanor. Tyler was there in his best suit, proud to introduce me to his colleagues. But halfway through the evening, I noticed Maria Santos, one of the housekeeping staff, looking overwhelmed as she served dinner. Her hands were shaking and she looked pale. Without hesitation, I got up from the head table, walked over to her, and quietly asked if she was okay. "Mrs. Wilson, I'm so sorry. My daughter is in the hospital and I couldn't get anyone to cover my shift." "Maria, go to your daughter. I'll handle your section." "But you can't. You're a board member." "I'm also someone who knows how to clear tables and serve dinner. Go." I spent the next hour helping serve the charity dinner, working alongside the catering staff in my evening gown and pearls. Some guests looked confused, but Tyler watched me with obvious pride. Later, as we drove home together, he said, "You know what I love most about tonight?" "What?" "You could have just written a check to help Maria, but instead you rolled up your sleeves and did the work. You're still the same person you always were." Money doesn't change who you are, Tyler. It just gives you more options for expressing it. Now, as I prepare for another board meeting this afternoon, I think about Eleanor Whitmore Cabot and her final gift to me. She didn't just leave me wealth. She left me the power to live authentically, to teach important lessons, and to make a difference in ways I never could have imagined. Tyler stops by every Sunday for dinner, often bringing Sarah. We cook together, laugh together, and talk about everything. His work, my volunteer projects, our shared commitment to treating all people with dignity and respect. He never again expresses shame about our family or our values. Instead, he tells his colleagues proudly about his mother who chose love over status, service over recognition, and principle over convenience. And I've learned something important too. Hiding your light doesn't make others shine brighter. Eleanor was right. I am royalty, not because of my bank balance, but because of my character. And royalty, true royalty, uses its power to lift others up. The scared, heartbroken woman who opened that envelope 6 months ago is gone. In her place stands someone who knows her worth, claims her power, and uses both to make the world a little more just. That, I think, would make Eleanor Whitmore Cabot very proud indeed.